Socialism is winning in America, or so we kind of think. The DSA is in fact making electoral gains, but the key problem here is socialism electorally within a liberal democracy like the United States, and socialism, which would actually be envisioned by someone like Karl Marx, not Lassalle, which would be through revolutionary means. The truth is, a lot of leftists don't actually believe that Zoran Mamdani or anyone else will actually achieve anything for the greater good, and if anything, will just create a social democracy state, which is exactly what I want to talk on in this video, which is Zoran Mamdani and or on Zoran Mandani and social democracy. More specifically, though, my problems with social democracy, not Zoran Mamdani. If you want to listen to other people explain their problems about Mamdani, go ahead. I would take any leftist over, and I mean like socialist, anyone who wants to abolish capitalism over any liberal any day. So yeah. When it comes to Mandani, we must fundamentally understand these two perspectives on the left regarding him, which I feel both ring true. We must acknowledge the fact that we do live in a country where the Overton window is shifted so far to the right that someone like Mandani, who realistically speaking is a social democrat, is treated as this radical left lunatic. In turn, the revisionist leftist perspective would be that Mandani is doing the most he can to establish what can be real socialism and class consciousness while trying to remain in political power. The second perspective would be that Mamdani is simply insufficient and acting more as a form of controlled opposition, that in the long run will actually reduce anti-capitalist sentiment by establishing a social democracy. In turn, we would still live in a liberal bourgeois state, but with a robust welfare system, all without the workers owning the means of production. Now, I feel that both of these positions are true and false in a sense. Yes, Mamdani, compared to the rest of the American left in our government, is far more effective, but he absolutely can go farther. He didn't need to keep NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch, and he shouldn't have, nor should he have affirmed Israel's right to exist. Yes, Mamdani would probably rule more as a social democrat and could actually end up hurting class consciousness efforts by making a more palatable form of capitalism. But even in actual existing socialism like China, non-governmental worker union strikes are suppressed, which in a sense defeats the entire purpose of socialism and a worker-owned means of production. When will China actually reach this worker-led state rather than state capitalism? The truth is, we really don't know anything. But what we do know is that we must avoid social democracy. Sure, I would say it's preferable to a neoliberal capitalist state and most definitely preferable to the fascism that we're encountering now. The truth is, however, every problem that we see with modern capitalism will just end up reproducing itself with the fatal flaw of social democracy, that being the bourgeois state that exists in any form of corporatism. When the means of production stay private, we still live under this dictatorship of capital. The question of political dictatorship is different, though, than the question of economic dictatorship. In any economy, we live under a dictatorship, that of capital or that of the proletariat. If the forces that control capital, the bourgeois, still control our need to survive, even under this welfare system, they control us, period. If the bourgeois state can give us political rights, it can just as easily take them away. The main issue is how comfy people get to social democracy and how much these social benefits, which realistically should be rights, can be taken away by capitalist interests. In a sense, social democracy acts as a form of implicit nationalism. Social democrats, and I mean people who understand socialism and communism in theory, but choose to believe in social democracy, are in action nationalist. The global south remains exploited under social democracy. Jobs continue to be outsourced to areas where labor is cheaper and regulations are looser. The backs of the African, the Latino, the Asian, and the people of the world are inadvertently used to hold the systems of free universal healthcare, education, and transport, and other spoils of empire provided by a social democracy. It's a socialism for me, but not for the system, and it is a nationalist one at that. Why have one country, especially a Western country that benefits from the exploitation of the global South, prioritize over all others? Meaning, you don't actually want to stop exploitation, you want to stop feeling exploited. Social democracy in this sense, then, becomes a system of selfishness, still preferring a Western capitalist hegemony as long as the citizens obtain the spoils of such capitalist hegemony. Social democrats will claim that capitalism is good and works, but needs to be regulated. But ask the cobalt slave in the Congo how they like capitalism. Ask the child in Yemen or Gaza whose family was killed in an airstrike by these capitalist imperiums with the weapons made from the cobalt labored by the Congolese slaves if they like capitalism. Ask the West African child slave if they like harvesting cocoa for Nestle, Mars, and Hershey, so that the fortunate benefactors of this capitalism under social democracy can enjoy a sweet treat, and then ask them, do you like capitalism? All of these problems will continue to exist in a social democracy, and you're either too scared to care about losing your lavish life under capitalism by resorting to socialism instead of social democracy, or care too little about the world's people if they're poor, brown, or black. My genuine thoughts on social democracy. Anything is preferable to neoliberal capitalism, but goddamn, we should not be able to live in a social democracy forever. In fact, any state controlled by a private means of production, that must go to the workers. Thank you.